Welcome to another episode of the Life Sciences Professional Podcast. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today. I think a lot of individuals will learn a great deal of information from our guest, Owen Jones. And he comes from the telecommunications industry and has successfully made the transition into the medical device industry. And he has a lot to share about how he did that and what he does to make himself very successful. He's been a top performer for many years now in the medical device industry, and I'm happy to introduce you to him. Well, hi, Owen. It's great to have you and joining us here on the Life Sciences Professional Podcast. And, we've known each other for a number of years since you were at TELUS and made the transition successfully, as I mentioned earlier in my introduction about you. Joining Venus Concepts, where you are now. But, maybe tell the audience a bit about yourself and, personally and professionally, just so they get to know the Owen that I know.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks very much for having me on the show too as well. This is really exciting. So, like one of your past guests, Riley, I was born and raised in Winnipeg, and I've been living here in Calgary now for 23 years. I grew up very heavily involved in competitive football and hockey, in Winnipeg and that. And, it's amazing. And one of the things I was excited about talking to you about too is, sports is a fantastic foundation for many of the things that we have, in life. It, helps instill all of our focus and our grit and our drive and those kind of things. So I find that day to day that's sort of how I govern things and how I work along. I started my junior sales career in radio in Winnipeg, and it was one of those sales jobs as a junior rep where you get thrown the yellow pages across the table, and it's hey, go to town and look and find some people that want to work with us. So it's a little bit like an education by fire, which was really good. And then I had a couple more roles within the radio industry, in Manitoba, BC, ultimately back here in Calgary. And, and from there, that's where I transitioned to telecom and working for telecommunications when you and I had met years ago. So, I started as an inside sales manager with TELUS. And then I moved into the business sales management. I managed a fairly large scale team. And then I went into operations. I wanted to understand business and, the overall kind of round of, the operational side and that. So I moved into that. And then, ultimately I left and I went to a manufacturing company where I was able to manage all of Western Canada from pretty well Thunder Bay through to Victoria, and as well as Northwestern US. So I managed all business, had some people that worked for me too as well. And, we were able to grow that business to about 173% of what it was. It's actually a kind of a funny story now. There's 3 people that do that job that I did, back in the day. And so, I got a call while I was there, and that call was to come back and potentially do another tour of duty with TELUS to do the job that I ultimately wanted, and the job that, prior to leaving that I wanted. That was really, large scale business and enterprise type sales. So it was good timing for me too. As you and I have talked, we had just adopted our daughter, and it was my wife was getting a little tired of calling me, and I was in Victoria, and I was in Winnipeg, and I was in Portland, and that kind of idea. So it was good timing for me to kind of roll it back and come back to that. So I did that for quite a while. It really gave me the opportunity to work on complex deals and large deals and become an expert on the things that drive, C-suite professionals and how that works, and really finite my skills on that. It was a fantastic learning. At TELUS, they have really great learning, and it gave me the opportunity to, be a little bit closer. But ultimately, I think what it did was it gave me the ability and gave me the foundation that I needed to move into life sciences and with medical device sales. And so ultimately, the opportunity with Venus came about, and I was really excited to move into something really cool and exciting and a little bit different. And I'm passionate about the company and the products and the customers we have, and all the really cool results we get for patients. And so, yeah, I've had lots of success as a high performer. I was rookie of the year. I've been President's Club, all that kind of thing as well too. And a little bit about myself. I'm married to a very understanding lady and supportive lady,
No
which
kidding. Yeah.
which is good. Yeah, who has a sense of humor, which I think is even more important. And we have two wonderful kids. We have my daughter's 15 and my son's 12. So then on top of that, it's not like we're busy enough with family and that, but I'm the president of the Calgary Hornets Lacrosse Association, and I'm involved with all the sports and activities that my kids have and have going on for each week. It seems like it's something different, but that's our job to do that. So yeah.
It's good. It's great. Yeah, well, lots of the guests that we have talk about, you can be high performer, but you also have the other side of you, which is your family and everything too, right? So you've been
Absolutely.
successful at balancing both.
Yeah, some days better than others. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. There's
Yeah.
no question. I've been there, done that.
Yeah, I know you have. I know you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had this conversation, I know, before, and I thought it would be great to sort of have this discussion and share your opinion on this. But,
Yeah.
As a sales representative, when you're selling to such a high level of professionalism and expertise, which are physicians or a clinical specialist like nurses and so forth, is making sure as a representative that you understand, respecting that intelligence and knowing how to approach that when you're a specialist in your area.
No.
Can you sort of speak to that and what your thoughts are and what you learned going into the industry and not making that mistake?
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that has to be respected when when you come into the job too, is truly the acumen that you and the level of acumen that you need to be at when you're talking to people, right? Especially doctors, physicians, plastic surgeons, dermatologists. They're very intelligent people, and I think that they're super good with the way that they treat patients and all these different things. But the one thing that we bring to the table from an acumen perspective is that level of business and that level of expertise within business, right? I think it's hard for them to understand and really keep up with trends in the industry, with things that are happening, with their competitors, for instance, or the new technologies. Technology moves so fast, and I always make the joke about we have this like trade-in program, and I make the joke that you're going to want to probably trade that device in or trade that technology in, because we don't know 4 years from now it might actually take the dog for a walk and do all the stuff that you need it to do as well, right? So I think providing them with the understanding of how that enhances their business and what it needs to do for them personally, and as well, you want to really enhance their confidence and how they can acquire clients and make their business insulated from all the other stuff that's going on too as well, while giving them the confidence that it's going to set them apart from everybody too, right? So really it comes down to that thing that you and I have talked about before, and that's really sell and educate them, but don't tell them. Don't talk to them, talk with them, kind of idea. And that that really drives a lot of the stuff that we've talked about too, with the consultancy aspects and things like that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you think about yourself as a representative, you've won awards like we've talked about, and not every rep that you work with or that I interview or that are in companies, they're not all winning the President's Award. They're not all winning exceeding their targets every year, or winning rep of the
Yeah.
year. So you've been successful doing that year after year, right? Whether it was with TELUS or with Venus Concepts. What makes you different? What sets you apart? Why is it you're able to do that?
Yeah, I think there's a few things with it. I think one of
Mm-hmm.
the things is that I really it's amazing. When I was a very young rep and going back to that, I was told something, and that phrase was, if you take care of business, business will take care of itself, that kind of idea. And I think there's a lot of aspects to that of not only do you have to have hard work, but you have to have creativity and energy and excitement and passion and all the different things that you truly bring to the table. But I think more than that, you have to understand who you are. You have to understand that the skills that you bring to the table, or the assets you bring to the table, how can you use those things to have success, right? I have I have an example of, years ago, I went into a doctor's office. And this is when I started this job here. It's going to be about 5 years ago. And I went into this doctor's office, just full of vinegar and just ready to tell them about all the cool stuff that I had learned. And I just got back from training in Toronto, and it was just exciting, right? So I go in, and the second thing out of my mouth is, the ROI on this device is this, and this is what we can bring to the table, and things that we talked about when I was on course and that we were doing. And so the doctor stopped me right away, and it was a doctor here in Calgary, and he said to me, he said, I got to tell you something about you capital sales guys. Every time you come in, the first thing we talk about is ROI. He's like, ROI this, ROI that. He's like, I want to tell you that you're killing yourself, because you are really like, it's very subjective, and sometimes it's untrue based on the data that you think you have, or the numbers, or that kind of idea. And if you want to be different than everybody else, like, don't talk about ROI kind of idea. And so it took me back. I was a little taken back by the whole thing. And, it was kind of, the rest of the meeting was a little awkward, sort of thing. But I remember going back to my car, and I sat back in my car, and I turned the car on, and I was kind of reflecting on how the meeting went and how I felt afterwards, and how I was going to debrief my VP and that kind of idea on this doctor that we were targeting. And I thought to myself, I'm like, you know what? This guy just made me $1 million. He made me $1 million from the perspective of, he gave me the strength and the understanding that you have to be different. I don't want to be the same. So now, truly to this day, and even what I tell some of the other reps that I mentor and that are junior reps, is that, I use that example, and I say, when I go in, I say, you know what, people are going to come in, other reps are going to come in, they're going to talk about ROI, they're going to say ROI this, ROI that. I said, I'm going to provide you with some details about how your return on the investment is really important, and how we can target that investment paying for itself. But I want you to know it's subjective, and I want you to know that the data is based on, different things. So, let's work together to kind of understand that. And I think right off the bat, they're like, oh, this guy's a little different. Maybe I should listen to them. And I also, talk about the fact that my background is not medical. I'm not a nurse. Like, I know your background's in nursing and things like that. So, I don't have that medical background. I had to actually go back and take some online stuff and learn some stuff about medical, just to understand it a little bit better. But my background's business, and I'm really strong with that. So that is where I talk about how I'm going to enhance them and enhance our relationship by my business knowledge, and the fact that I keep that in mind. And I'm an expert on business to some extent, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, Owen, that a lot of representatives, they take the course like you're talking about, and they approach each customer exactly the same way, as opposed to stepping back and going into each account and really trying to uncover what's important to the customer, and where do they want to take their business, and asking questions and truly listening to them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
they just blindly, like I remember sitting with a rep that reported to me, and she had like her list of things that she wanted to discuss,
Yeah.
and with the doc. And or actually it was not a doctor, it was a CFO, now that I remember. And she had a list of things, and we're sitting there, and she asks a couple questions, and then he identifies a couple things that he's interested in, and he mentions them. It totally goes over her head. She doesn't say a thing, and I don't interject. I let her, because I know him quite well, and I just let her do it. And so she continues down her own agenda, and he again brings up what it is he's looking for. She again, it goes right over her head. She continues down her agenda, and then finally I asked him a question that related to what was important to him, and he said, yes, I would, really like to talk about that next time you come in. I've run out of time. I can't and continue on in our meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we left, and I asked her, how do you think the meeting went? She said, oh, I think it was fantastic. He really likes us. We had good conversation. I think we have a good opportunity there. And I asked her what she thought the opportunity was. And she totally missed the key points of what he was saying.
Yeah.
She only heard what she wanted to hear. And, that's a lot of times, we're so caught up in the way we've been trained, or what we think we're supposed to uncover, or what our objectives are, as opposed to what we're listening to the customer and what's important to them. Because all you have to do is pivot, and you can close, right? Uncover the needs, position your products to meet their needs, and away you go. And, you see that a lot. that
Absolutely.
happens. Um, you mentioned something, I think it was last week, maybe, or an earlier conversation. And one of the things that you said to me that really hit home, and I loved it. And you said that one of the things that representatives need to have to be successful in sales, period, was, do you remember saying this about being passionate about being a sales professional, being
Absolutely.
proud to be a sales professional, right?
Absolutely.
What were some of the other things you said around that? Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people have trouble overcoming, right? That's
Yeah.
there's a huge spectrum of salespeople, right? But one of the things I think people lose track of is that we've been a salesperson ever since we were 3 years old. Mom can have a cookie, or that kind of idea, right? So it evolves into what it is now in the professional sales that we do and what we're in. But truly the pride and the embracing the fact that you do bring value to them as a sales professional. And sales, there's, because sales is such a spectrum. I think people, they get the telemarketing calls where they don't, which, that's a great way to hone in your talents. If you ever want to become a talent at talking to people, that kind of idea. But I think one of the things that they don't embrace is they don't embrace their ability to sell, and to do the sale in a way where they're proud of it, right? And I think it leads a lot of salespeople to missteps. So your example of you go in and she's waiting for those trigger words or those keywords of the stuff that she had already planned out, but realistically she's missing so much information, and she's not asking the correct questions, which are part of the sales process, to get
Hmm.
the answers that she ultimately needs. And that is part of the leaving business on the table. But I think what it ultimately does is it ultimately creates inefficiencies, and those inefficiencies take forever for that business to close, if it does close. Or they get overwhelmed by another stronger rep that comes in, and and they never have a chance, kind of idea. And the scariest thing, I think, for a lot of people, even junior reps or even tenured reps, is they're afraid to ask for the business. They're afraid to say, I want your business, or can we move forward, or that kind of idea. And I think that's a struggle, but you're exactly right. I think it's the pride of doing this job, or being a professional, and being a sales professional. They're embarrassed by it in some way, and I'm not. I'm really passionate about kind of this and what we do. My brother is a sales professional as well, and in a very different industry. But I look at the benefits that we have, and the fact that the smarter you are and the harder you work and the things like that, there's different benefits that come from it. So jumping in with both feet, right, and really
Hmm.
embracing that
Hmm.
is a super thing to do right off the bat.
Yeah. And, one of the things that, I think people miss out on, or, really devalue, is mindset. And, I wondered what your thoughts were in terms of how much mindset plays on you, or what do you think the impact is on top performance? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Mindset, I think, is everything. Like I think that from the minute that you get up to the minute you go to bed, you have to have that mindset. We pivot throughout the day with different mindsets too, right? And that positive mindset, the ability for you to and I know there's scientific studies and data that talks about mindset and how important that mindset is to the success going forward. But if you do this job for any amount of time, or you do any job for that matter, but really this job, it can be a job that can beat you up sometimes. And the
Yeah.
only thing, that really truly gets you by, or allows you to kind of stay classy and make sure that you're not letting the dark clouds sort of come in, is that mindset. And I think there's a true talent, and there's a true ability for you to control that mindset to gain success, right? To move forward, to allow yourself to create efficiencies and effectiveness, and all those different things, shift the paradigm, all the different things that you're trying to do to make sure that you're on the up and up, and that you're excited and happy and having some fun, right? We do this because it's what we kind of choose to do, but there has to be aspects of it that are fun, because if it's not, then then you're not. It makes it for a really long day, and it makes your mindset really deteriorate. So
So what are some mindset tips that you have? Like, what are some things you do to sort of manage? We all do some different, I have some things that I do. What are some things that you do as a sales professional? I mean, you're out there on your own or sometimes working from home. I mean, sales is probably, I would say, one of the loneliest jobs. I know I
Yeah,
did it for years, out in the road. I love that. Actually, I'm a road runner, but my family nicknamed me that pretty early. And and even what I do for a living now, there's nobody that's telling me to pick up the phone, or you get
yeah,
difficult clients, and I'm just one of these people who parks what happened 5 minutes ago and I just move on. I just ignore things.
yeah, yeah,
It's resilience, right? And it's just surround yourself with positive people. If you're having a bad day, pick up the phone and talk to a customer who always lifts you
yeah,
up. It's always happy to talk to you, always willing to give you business, whatever.
yeah,
Those are the things that I do. But and get away from, remove yourself from, if you're having it difficult, frustrating, you can't kind of move forward, you've hit that wall. Don't keep doing that same thing. Get up
no,
from your desk, go, get out of your car, go for coffee, go do something, and then go back to it, right?
yeah,
There's
yeah,
just so
yeah,
many things. I exercise every day. I have a routine I follow
yeah,
religiously, and I got a great sense of humor too, just like yourself.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what are the things you do that make you
yeah.
survive?
Yeah, survive is a good word. That's awesome. I think there's a few things. I think you talked about it, and you'd mentioned that in sales, but even the past few years, I think have highlighted the fact that we all kind of live on islands too, as well.
Mhm.
Especially when you manage a large territory, or you're thousands of kilometers away from where your boss lives, or things like that. Potentially different time zones and different areas of the country or different areas of North America. So from a mindset perspective, there's a few key things that I do, and it's nothing earth shattering, I would say, but engagement is a big thing. I think engagement of internal team. So there are some people within my team, like the Canadian team, that are counterparts of mine that I really like, I really respect, and so we have this thing where we'll pick up the phone and call and talk to each other and chit chat and really really connect and do those kind of things. But mindset wise too, I think just getting out of the house. I think as a salesperson,
Mhm.
one of the most beneficial things that we have is that we have the ability of hopping in our car and going and seeing somebody, or driving around and doing some prospecting, or doing those kind of things that really just sort of get the excitement going and give us the ability to talk about the passions and excitement that we have in our job. And I think it's kind of simple and maybe a little bit, I don't know if some people may agree with it or not, but I'm really big at getting up in the morning and getting dressed, and getting dressed in nice, like, business formal or business casual type of, and then starting my day from there, whether that's 7:30 in the morning, and getting up, getting going, kind of doing that. And I find that even like what I'm wearing right now with like a suit and tie, this is a usual day for me, just based on the fact that you dress for the job you want, kind of idea, right? So I find that even small things like that really get me into the mindset that I am a professional, that I'm doing it. I found that was highlighted a little bit to me, when we all were working from home and couldn't leave, and I'd be
Mhm.
2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm wearing like jeans and a t-shirt, and I haven't had a shower yet, right? And I just didn't find that I was as
Yeah.
efficient as I possibly could be. So just little things like that, and then having the ability to change your mindset from giving your mindset a little bit of a break too, right? So you have the involvement with and exercise is a big thing, like me too as well, and sports. And I don't know if golf necessarily creates less stress for me. It tends to do more sometimes, but
Yeah.
but I do it anyways. It's the pain that we go through to try to succeed. But just looking at the world through the kid's eyes or the dog's eyes or whatever kind of idea helps to really clear that mindset too, and then refocus you on what's important.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of get you jacked up. But never lose focus of why we're doing this, or never lose focus of the aspects of the job that you really like. Because I think that there are aspects of any job that are trouble. They're hard, right? They're really hard to do. So if you're focused and you remember what those aspects of the job that you really like are, then you'll try to replicate that, right? And I love the idea of, you call one of your customers that you get along with really well, and I do that like daily, right? I have one customer that I love, up in Edmonton, and he's just phenomenal. And whenever I'm feeling, like I need to really talk about business and how success happens, I kind of call him. I'm a little selfish
Right.
that way, so it's good. Yeah, yeah, so it's great.
And along the way, it, did you start out your career like with a mentor, or do you have somebody that was an early mentor that taught you something? Like, I know when I first started out in sales, I had a mentor. His name was John. And one of the things that he taught me, and I love this, and I think it's very true, is you make sure you work Fridays.
Yeah, yeah,
And I remember him teaching me that, and to this day I do. Um, and he said, because I'm telling you, your competition doesn't. And it was funny, him and I always work Fridays, and I'd
yeah,
be out in the hospitals just carrying our bags back then. And there would be a handful of us that I would see around the region that we'd see Fridays, but nobody else, right?
yeah,
None of my
yeah, yeah,
competitors. Like, I'd see maybe
yeah,
other days that we'd be out, never on a Friday. And, the customers would see me.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
and they knew I was always there. It made
yeah,
a huge difference. I mean, that was part of
absolutely,
being a top performer, right? And helping me
absolutely.
overachieve. It was one of the best pieces of advice. It sounds corny, but even now
No,
on a Friday, right? Like, working and making
yeah,
sure you're picking up the phone, you're the one doing your thing. So what was
yeah,
something one of your mentor told
yeah. Yeah,
you that
and
really
and I
paid off?
and it's funny you say that about Friday, because I think Friday is the busiest day of my week. With wrapping up and planning for the following week and things like that too as well. So yeah, growing up, I had two key mentors. So I had one mentor when I started way back in the day as a junior rep in radio, and that mentor was my uncle, and he was actually with the Ontario radio group. So he was in radio in Ontario. He's my dad's brother, and him and I were fairly close. Al is his name, and just a phenomenal guy. And I remember, and that's where I got the take care of business, business takes care of you kind of mindset
Yeah.
too. And so he was a great mentor for keeping focused, and he's very upbeat and like a really good guy and that kind of idea. And then, as I progressed along later in my career, I would say the second mentor I had was a CFO of the company that I worked for, the manufacturing company that I worked for, and his name was Greg, and he was still my mentor even after I left. I had the utmost respect for him, and he was his background was accounting, and he was really good with numbers, and he understood business, and he was somebody that had a lot of common sense too as well. He owned multiple businesses, and he was very entrepreneurial and that kind of idea. And so I would, as a sponge, I would spend a lot of time with him to sort of get that. And I'll never forget one of the things that he said to me is, and he talked about salespeople that he hired and salespeople that he had. And he said, you know what, I always love hiring salespeople that like cars and buy expensive cars. He's like, because I know they're going to work super hard just to pay for that car. So, as my career went on, he'd always want me popping by with the vehicle that I was driving or whatever, and, picking them up for lunch and stuff like that. So it was kind of funny. But his thing was, if you have incentives in life that are going to drive you to do that, those incentives will make you work hard, or it will make that struggle is real, and that struggle will provide you success, kind of idea, right? So some of the things that he would give me, and I think to this day, he's since retired, and now he's a big motorcycle guy, so he's in his 70s and that, but he still motorcycles down in Mexico and does all these things. So we don't talk as much, but the value that he gave me was unbelievable. Just the way to look at business and look at the ability to deal with customers on that level, on the business side.
Interesting. I have a client, a couple of them actually, that when we're recruiting for them and bringing them talent, um, one in particular jokes a bit about it, but is serious to the same point that your mentor is that, he hopes that, he'll ask about, what sort of things do they like, what it motivates
Yeah,
them, what's important to them, what are they striving for? And he looks for individuals that have those goals. So they'll be motivated, to your point, to want to make
absolutely,
money, to be overachievers.
absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
people are, not very motivated, just kind of hanging out and saying, well, I'm not really sure. They don't really have a direction, no goals. the chance of them being overperformers isn't very high.
No,
So,
no. Yeah,
and every single one of them that he hires are overachievers. Like
yeah,
they're knocking their numbers out of the park. So
yeah.
he's very good at what he does. Yeah.
Sometimes comfort it can create that complacency, right? So I think that, yeah, exactly right. You need to understand what that fire is, and truly, I know that if you or I had won the Lotto Max last Friday, we wouldn't be as motivated to go crazy to acquire new business for the company, right? That would have been a whole different perspective. So yeah, it's and that's really what I look at when I'm dealing with junior reps too, as well, is exactly that. I don't necessarily ask them what car they drive now, but if we get in and they're driving a nice car, I'm like, yeah, they're going to
Yeah.
do really well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it
Exactly.
drives my wife bonkers, but that's a whole different ball game. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And there are tools, as business has evolved, and we're so lucky and fortunate. Like I love technology,
yeah.
I love the tools. Um, what sort of tools do you recommend or think are really important and really encourage reps to master, to be
Yeah.
successful, and that you think are really important for top performance?
Yeah, there's tools can make all the difference in the world, and I pride myself even internally in our company as being sort of the Salesforce guy, right? I'm a
Right.
big Salesforce fan. I took a lot of training on it, and that comes from my days with TELUS. They lived and died by Salesforce. And so even when I took this job, one of the questions that I had asked in the interview 6 years ago kind of idea was, what do you use as your CRM, or what tools do you have? And the answer was Salesforce, and it was actually a driver to me
Oh,
wanting to take the job, just because I knew that I could come in and my comfort level of building building opportunity pipelines and managing customers and things like that would be really easy to do because I'm such a platinum user doing it. And at the end of the day, these tools, Salesforce in particular, I think just from organizing and efficiencies and effectiveness, they help to increase sales by 15 to 20% if you're doing it right? If you're managing it, and the knowledge capture. And as I go on in years, I'm not smart enough to remember what I talked to somebody about 3 weeks ago. So taking notes on it and really being able to kind of go back and focusing on that is a really big thing. So it quickly became important just based on the reports that you can pull. And one of the things I love about it too is that you should always sort of know where you stand, right? So we have dashboards that show who the best of the best is, right? And I love looking at that, and it's a bit of a motivator for me if I look and I see some of the people that I feel like I should be above me, and then it motivates me to sort of work a little bit harder. It's like I don't want it to necessarily be too much like Top Gun, like there's two O's and Goose with the plaque on the wall, but those reporting and those dashboards are really motivating for you to know where you stand and what you need to do to be able to get to those numbers. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things, the CRM tools and the ability to use it. One of the amazing things that we have though now is we have social media too, right? And I would say that I'm not phenomenal at social media, but it really creates an easy way to showcase and engage your customers, and really gather information about other stuff in the market, other doctors, different things. So it's really awesome. But the only thing that I would always caution, or I even talk to some of the junior reps about, is that you want to use it as a way to increase your brand, not deteriorate your brand. Because I think that's one of the things that happens to a lot of people, is that sometimes they put on things like, offensive stuff or political views or their views
mm,
on certain things, or,
mm.
whatever that is. And sometimes that can be a negative, right? That can do it. So
Never thought of
really
that.
being, be in control of that. And you want to make sure you don't have too many personal images and things like that too as well, if you're using it for business and if it's a
Mhm,
business thing.
mhm.
One of the first things that I do when I'm dealing with a doctor is part of my going on and understanding their clinic, or looking, a lot of times I go into LinkedIn, right? And you want to understand who they are and where they come from and things like that. So make sure that you use it as an opportunity to increase your personal brand and an opportunity to engage your customers, right? And then one of the benefits that we have, I'd say probably the third tool that I use a lot, is we have a tool that it makes it so easy to, it's called Paper Flights, and we used to use another one before, but it's so easy to be able to talk to a customer and send them electronic videos and information and brochures and white papers and all those different things where you can actually create those things for them, customize it and send it to them, and you can do it really quick. So I find what kind of blows them away is if I'm on a call or a meeting, and all of these things can be mobile now on your devices, I'll get back in the car, and by the time I drive away out of the parking lot, I've already sent them paper flight information on the stuff that we've already talked about, right? Or I've sent them. So that's a really good tool to be able to use. And nowadays, we're mobile, right? So whether I'm in my office here in Calgary, that is noisy because it's a home office, or whether I'm in a hotel in Vancouver or whatever, nobody knows, right? Nobody knows where I am. So these mobile tools that we have to engage customers and really do that are phenomenal. So those would be probably the biggest three things that I focus on now.
Right. Yeah, those are great examples. And social media for sure. I see reps engaging more and more on that, and definitely using it to look at your customers. A lot of docs
Yeah.
too. I notice, plastics, dentists, surgeons and stuff. They're on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
use it a lot.
Yeah.
Instagram, Twitter, some
Absolutely.
Facebook, right? So you want to
Yeah.
definitely want to do
Yeah.
that. Now,
Instagram, I think, is probably one of the biggest things, Linda,
oh
is
yeah.
that, especially when it comes to gathering, you want to understand with these doctors that you're targeting or working with what they have as well, right? That's part of your education. If they have competitive devices, or if they're tied in with a competitor and those kind of things, you want to make sure from your whole consultancy side of what you do. And it's amazing how they're posting that they're at events with competitors, or they're really proud of what this new device that they got. So all of that stuff is a really good education for you to understand, who they know, what's important to them, what keeps them up at night. And if certain companies that you compete against have some shortcomings, it's an easy conversation with them too, to highlight what those shortcomings are, because they potentially are feeling it too. How
Mhm.
has your service been with this customer, or that kind of idea. So all of those things are really, good ways to educate yourself on what's important to them.
And so one last question before we wrap up,
Yeah.
Owen, going from outside the industry, obviously, and you had sales experience, and, we often bring individuals from outside the industry, such as yourself,
Yeah.
into the medical device. And it can be a little nerve wracking, to say the
It
least, right?
can.
For some
Yeah.
individuals, even though, you really want it, and you've got great sales skills and you're quite
Yeah.
confident and competent in that area. But what advice would you give to help individuals who are anxious about meeting with professionals like doctors? Because sometimes that's intimidating, right? You grow up
Yeah.
and you think, oh, geez, they're so smart, and, I'm a little nervous. What would you say to them?
Yeah.
What advice?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think that we all go through it. One of the things that I was highlighted to me fairly early on was that when I get a little bit jacked up or a little bit nervous, I talk faster. It's kind of one of the things that I do, and I can recall coming out of a meeting and just feeling like I was road runnering the doctor that I was talking to, because I was talking fast and thinking fast and all those kind of things. I think one of the biggest things is to have the knowledge and have the confidence that you're bringing a massive value to them. What you do is valuable. The fast talking thing is a good example of really slowing things down to a point where you can appreciate what they're saying, not having that confidence of that consultancy side. And truly, that was one of the biggest things I think I brought to the table, whether I'm in medical device or telecom or wherever I am. That consultancy sales aspect, and really that consultancy sales mindset, gives you the ability to not be intimidated or overwhelmed. Doctors are really, really smart people. There's many people that are very smart people, but they're not always experts on the stuff that you're bringing to the table, whether that's about your products, the technology, how you can market, the business that you have. one of the things that you and I talked about is I live and die by my 80-20 rule, right?
Mhm.
I like to simplify things, and I like to really understand sort of how that works. And but I'm a big believer that listening 80% and talking 20% while you're in a meeting with a doctor, especially a very intelligent person, can give you so much information, right? It can really give you the ability that you don't have to be intimidated, because it's almost like a learning course for you, right? So that part of it is really, 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 really big. And and not to talk too much about the 80-20 rule, but really the 80-20 rule, from a business perspective, that 80% of the business that you do comes from 20% of the customers that you see. And 80% of what you should be doing should be client engagement, 20% should be administrative work. Like, there's a lot of different things.
Mhm.
And so by sort of following these rules that you have, or the protocols that you've developed, it'll give you that confidence even when you're face to face with that doctor, of knowing that you're not overwhelmed because you're not disorganized, right? You're prepared before you go in. And preparation is probably one of the other biggest things that you need to do. Don't go into a meeting unprepared. And don't go into a meeting when you're late. They seem like they're sort of common sense things, but I can recall going to a meeting and being 10 minutes late on the doctor, and doctor's time is valuable. And there was no way before I even walked in the door that I was getting that sale. Like, he knew it, I knew it, whether it was a disrespect thing or whether
Wow.
traffic was bad or whatever. And so a lot of times I find myself 30 minutes before a meeting sitting in the parking lot, educating myself and understanding what their webpage looks like and who they have and what they're doing, and that. So, really, if you want to deal with the stress of a meeting, and the easiest way to deal with stress is to avoid it. And avoiding stress is much easier by preparing properly, doing the things that are right, and really having that confidence that you're an expert. You're an expert on the stuff that you do. You're an expert on sales, and you offer things to them that they would have to hire a consultant at at $400 an hour to be able to provide them with this information. So
Mhm.
that value that you're bringing to the table to them is stuff that so it gives you that value. It gives you the ability to really appreciate that too as well.
Yeah, and and I totally agree with what you're saying too, Owen. And for individuals who listen to this podcast who are interested in, transitioning into the medical industry, or, whether it's dental or pharmaceutical or
Yeah,
medical device, biotechnology, the thing that they have to remember is it's an industry that trains you very well.
yeah,
And they don't put you out there without product knowledge and understanding
yeah,
how to approach the customers, but it still is a learning experience. And I do find that if you the doctors know you're new in the account, and they'll know that you're new in the business. And most of them, I
yeah,
won't say all of them, but I'll say most of them are very understanding, and they love to teach by nature. That's the
yeah,
business they're in, right? They teach
yeah,
patients, they teach residents. That's just the way they are. So they're quite, they're open to doing that. I remember I was a senior leadership role with a medical device company, and I was unfamiliar with how the products were used in the OR. I was never an OR nurse. I was a nurse in other areas, neonatal, orthopedic trauma, ICU, but never in the OR. So I had no idea what was these products were used for. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I knew what they were used for, but I hadn't seen them in action. So I
yeah,
called
yeah,
up one of customers that I knew, and I said, "Hey, can I spend a couple days in your ORs just so I could see how all of our products were used,
yeah,
so I could be more supportive with the reps, could understand how to do pricing, contracts, all that kind of stuff." And so I did, and it made me feel more comfortable, right?
absolutely.
And it gave me more credibility with the reps, more credibility with the customers. Well, the doctors were fantastic. Absolutely
Yeah,
fantastic. Because
yeah,
if you ask for advice, get money. But if
absolutely,
you ask for money, you're going to get advice, right?
absolutely,
You push in
absolutely.
too much.
Yeah,
So it really was the best way to do it. And here I am a nurse, right? So I didn't pretend or go in there thinking that I knew everything. I didn't. So, it's okay to
yeah,
be in the learning mode for quite some time in your career, and you're always going to be, because you can be a medical device rep with one company, go into another company, you have to learn that
yeah,
product, go into another company, you have to learn that product. So when you do make a transition like you did, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I think that that's another point that representatives need to understand too. It's all right to be in that
Yeah.
orientation, learning part of your job and your career. And as you said, you become experts. You learn, and your expertise is the
Yeah.
sales and it's the product knowledge. The
Yeah.
doctor is expert in what they do, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
well, this has been
Yeah.
so informative,
No,
Owen,
thank
and
you.
I'm
No,
sure
it's been
that
awesome.
yeah, and I'm sure that our listeners will be really happy with the information that you shared. And you know, um, it's always enlightening to hear different people's perspectives and how they've approached things. But thank you again for all your time, and we'll hope to have you back again. Down the road.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely been my pleasure. As I told you when we first hopped on, the hardest thing was making the environment quiet enough because we're always go go go, and it's busy. But
Yeah.
it's been absolutely wonderful, and I appreciate you spending the time with me today. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.